Welcome to this introductory webinar series on how to free yourself from negative emotions in the context of Ren Shui. My name is Kim Knight and I'm a Ren Shui teacher and also an emotional intelligence trainer. So in this little video series, I'm going to be sharing about the connection on emotions and patterns, and how we need to address both sides of the coin, if you like, in order to work on our patterns. And then share what I call 3 steps to emotional freedom, which are the steps out of our emotional patterning. And then invite you to an opportunity to journey towards greater emotional freedom and eventually emotional emancipation. So this is part 1. The first video, and to start with just a little bit about emotions. You may have noticed that emotions are often seen as something bad or wrong, something to be afraid of perhaps, or kept secret, hide under the carpet, push away, suppress, not express. There are a lot of things that we learn to do or not do with our emotions. But the truth is, there's no such thing as a bad emotion. There's no good or bad emotions. They're just an internal form of feedback from inside the body to the head, giving us useful and sometimes vital information about our environment. They are also very connected with our patterns, as we'll see later. But the first point to understand and to recognize is that there's no such thing as a bad emotion. And just like a battery has a positive and a negative end, and that doesn't mean that the positive end is good and the negative end is bad, so it is with emotions. But unfortunately, most people have been unconsciously taught or have unconsciously trained themselves, and I underline the word unconscious here, that emotions are bad. And this then leads them to feel bad about having emotions and to feel that there's something wrong with them. In other words, wrong with themselves. And the problem with this is that we develop habits of avoiding our feelings, by example, for suppressing them or hiding them or bottling them up. And this is not a healthy way to deal with our emotions, and can lead to deep unhappiness and even chronic illness. So the way that I came to understand emotions was through my own chronic illness, which started off first of all as, I suppose we could say, mental illness when I was diagnosed with clinical depression, and then several years later with physical illness when I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I had a whole heap of other physical symptoms and conditions as well, a whole long list. But I had no idea, as I was experiencing these physical symptoms, that there was a direct correlation with my feelings and unresolved emotional hurts and my inability to be in touch with what I was feeling and know what I was feeling and know how to deal with those feelings, which was impossible to do at the time because I didn't even know I had the feelings. But it led me on a journey, a very long journey ultimately, to really explore emotions at a very deep level. Because after being diagnosed with chronic fatigue when I was, or I can't remember the age, but in 1995, after 5 years of searching for answers, I was still no closer to having an answer or a solution. And then I had a turning point understanding when I met my first Qigong teacher, and he explained to me that chronic fatigue was not actually a lack of energy. It was a blocking of energy. And specifically, in large part, it was a blocking of emotional energy, because emotions are a form of energy. And in that moment of understanding, I had a huge healing release, and my life changed completely. And I knew that I had to explore this concept of emotions and learn how to clear my emotions in order to fully clear my symptoms. And so I spent the next 5 years doing that, just completely focusing on using emotional clearing techniques and training in various emotional healing and clearing techniques to understand emotions and understand how to self-clear them. And as a result of that, I then ended up being professionally qualified to then help other people, and I started helping other people. And then since then have worked for 15 years helping other people heal their illnesses and their life problems through dealing with their emotions and their unresolved emotional hurts. So I really can say with absolute surety that emotions play a huge role in our well-being. Now, the good news is that we can learn not to be afraid of our feelings, and we can learn how to actively and intelligently manage them so that they no longer disturb us. And in Ren Shui, the way we would say that is that we learn how to maintain a calm, relaxed, natural state, and how to bring ourselves back to our calm, relaxed, natural state if we become disturbed. Disturbed meaning we have either an emotional disturbance, emotional ripples in the pond, or maybe other more mental disturbances in our thinking patterns. And eventually, with practice, we are no longer troubled by negative emotions, or we become less and less troubled by negative emotions, and instead we start to experience more ongoing sense of calm and peace within, and we restore ourselves more and more to an inner state of harmony and balance, where even if things happen which previously would have disturbed our state of mind and our emotional equilibrium, even when those things happen, we now are able to stay in a state of inner peace. And this is a return to our natural state. So let's look at the overriding goal and purpose of the Ren Shui system very quickly. Some of you may be familiar with this, and some of you it may be new information. And we can start by asking ourselves, what do we want in life? What do you want in life? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? And we can look at this on a personal level, but also on a collective level. What do we want for all of us rather than just ourselves? And once we have worked out what it is that we want, do we know how to get there? And Ren Shui gives us a very clear pathway for getting there, and also for understanding what the goal is anyway in the first place. Now, a few years ago, one sir talked about the 4 treasures of life, which were at that point health, happiness, a sense of well-being, and self-realization and wisdom. And then these 4 became 5, the Ren Shui High 5. And if we look at what is the purpose of life, or contemplate what is the purpose of life, humans have been searching hard to find the answer to this ultimate question. At the root of the many problems humans face is a lack of clarity of the purpose of life. In Ren Shui, the purpose of life is expressed as the Ren Shui High 5. These are 5 treasures naturally found within each of us. They provide clear goals and the direction for life cultivation using Ren Shui as a guide. We believe they are relevant to every human being because when these natural treasures manifest and are consistently present, all of humanity and nature will benefit. So there's a couple of things to point out here. These 5 natural treasures are found within us. They are not external, they are internal, they are intrinsic. And this can be quite a turnaround for many people because often, and it was the case for me, we are brought up thinking that we will be happy if we get X, Y, Z from the outside, in other words, from our environment. And that could be in the form of some person, for example, in a relationship. If we have the perfect relationship, we'll be happy. Or it could be in the form of a job. If we have the perfect job, we'll be happy. Or maybe it's that material object like a car or a house. Or maybe it's going on that perfect holiday. Or maybe it's having a certain amount of money in the bank. In our society, we're taught, and you've only got to look at advertising to see how this is taught to us. We're taught that our happiness lies on our external achievements. But actually, the truth is, our true happiness has nothing to do with our external world and everything to do with our internal world. And of course, what is in our internal world is totally up to us and individual to us, and only we have control over that. So Ren Shui teaches us how to cultivate and to find these 5 treasures inside of us. And also, another important point here is that when these natural treasures manifest, they are consistently present in all of humanity and nature, and all of humanity and nature will benefit. And this brings us to the overriding principle of Ren Shui, which is Zidu Du Ren, which means lift yourself up and then lift others up. So in Ren Shui, we learn to improve ourselves. And as we do that, we're then able to help other people improve themselves. So let's look at these 5 treasures that is what we're really after. And if we dig beneath the desires for whatever these external desires are, whether it's the money, the house, the car, the relationship, whatever it is, what we're really wanting are these 5 treasures. So first of all, a sense of well-being. A sense of well-being is a feeling of profound joy and contentment. It is a whole and complete state that encompasses every aspect of life. Health and happiness contribute greatly to the formation of a sense of well-being. Health and happiness being 2 of the other high 5s. And this sense of well-being is created and experienced as one practices the Wangong practices of Ren Shui. And it is an experiential experience. It is not an intellectual state. Although it affects our intellectual state, it is something that we experience and can only be experienced from within. It doesn't matter how many people may try to describe what that experience is. It's something that has to be felt for oneself and comes through one's own internal cultivation practices. The second one, happiness. True happiness arises spontaneously from a relaxed, calm, and natural state. It is a constantly present, joyous feeling felt in the whole body as though every cell of the body is smiling. So, as I said before, often we're looking for happiness outside of ourselves. For example, we go out for a nice evening with friends and we feel happy because we're with our friends, but that happiness is based on the fact that we were with our friends. And then maybe we come home and we don't feel so happy anymore. So it was a temporary happiness. The happiness that we're talking here about in Ren Shui is a happiness that arises from within. And the center point often of that arising is the heart. And it is a joy and a happiness that arises from within as a result of being in what we call a calm, relaxed, natural state. So when we restore our calm, relaxed, natural state, joy is the end result, and it comes automatically as a result of that state. The next one, health. In Ren Shui, we say that life consists of 3 main components: Jing, which is the body, Qi, and Shen. True health means the body functions well, Qi is in a good amount and of a high quality, and Shen, the true self, is leading the direction of life. So in Ren Shui, health is much more than just being physically fit and healthy at a physical level. Health encompasses all levels of our being: physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual, although we don't tend to use the word spiritual so much in Ren Shui. But it is the totality of our being, and it affects and is related to all levels of our being, and in fact our whole life. So it is much more than just physical health. The old paradigm would have been, if you look fit and healthy and you're slim and you look good, then you must be healthy. But actually that's not true at all. And I remember many years ago working with a client who was very beautiful, very slim, and if anybody had seen her, walking on the street, would have thought, whoa, that person is really healthy. But actually what was going on inside her body at an organ level and at a stress level was not healthy at all. So we should never judge a book by its cover when it comes to describing health. The fourth one is growth, the growing and developing ourselves. So in Ren Shui, the ultimate growth for a human life is attaining a state of realization and wisdom. In this state, the innate abilities of Shen, the true self, manifest consistently and guide all aspects of life. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in another video, but just to say here, one of the overriding goals of the Ren Shui system is cultivating self-realization in order to develop greater wisdom. And the point of that is that if we have greater wisdom, we make better choices and we're able to contribute in a more effective way to society and humanity. And therefore, we're able to help humanity in a much more positive and productive way. So we're not wanting growth for growth's sake. We're wanting it so that we have more wisdom, and that is what will help humanity move forward in a positive direction. And the last one, contribution. Contribution is living in a way that benefits humanity and nature and helps others achieve the 5 treasures. It is the way to truly transform humanity and human culture and solve the serious crises and problems humans face. So this is the Du Ren, the uplift others part of the Zidu Du Ren. Once we have cultivated the other 4 treasures, we're then in a position to be able to contribute in a healthy way to others and to the whole. And this is what we mean by contribution in Ren Shui. So I did this little diagram up some months ago at the start of the COVID crisis, and it's quite relevant really to the topic of emotions, because often people can find themselves experiencing what we call emotional roller coasters, where from one day to the next, or maybe from 1 hour to the next, we can be quite up and down in how we're feeling. Maybe we feel good one moment and then depressed the next, sad the next, happy the next. Our emotions are all over the place. And we can be hyper and we can be hypo. We can be in despair or we can be in hope. And one of the goals with the Ren Shui practices, or the One Gong practices, is that we start more and more to experience equilibrium, where no matter what is going on externally, no matter what life is throwing at us, we're able to maintain a state of equilibrium where we're not shaken or disturbed by what is happening. So if you look at your life currently as it is right now, you might like to rate for yourself how often are you able to stay in a really stable state when unexpected things happen. So, for example, which was quite a funny example that happened when I actually went to record this webinar live. And for those of the people who did actually come onto the live webinar, they already know this story. But for those of you who are watching the recording, you won't have heard it. About half an hour before I was due to present this webinar live, we had a power outage, which apparently was a planned power outage, but we hadn't been told about it. And the outage was for the whole day. So obviously no power, no internet. And I suddenly had to think, okay, where am I going to go where I can do a webinar? And I've only recently moved to Queenstown, not that familiar with places that I can go. And the first thought I had was the library. So I went down to the library and they said, yes, you can use our internet. But the problem was, the one thing I hadn't thought of was the fact that you can't really talk in a library. You're not meant to talk loud. and I thought, well, I can't sit in the library. There's no quiet nooks to go and sit in. And even if I found a quiet nook, people could still hear me. So then I thought, okay, well, the only place I can see is the spare bathroom that they have. So I went into the bathroom, and that's where I delivered the webinar from. But as I reflected, as I was doing the webinar, and even during the whole process of leaving the house to find somewhere to do the webinar from, I was aware that I wasn't really stressed, not like what I would have been in the past. If that had happened to me 10 years before, I would have been in panic mode, and I would have been rushing around, madly in a panic, and I probably wouldn't have been thinking that straight, and I would have had an elevated heart rate and everything that goes with being stressed. But I didn't do that. And the reason that I didn't do that was because of all the work that I've done on clearing emotions, and also all the One Gong practices. And by the way, I'm far from perfect, but what I'm saying is there was a significant difference in my response. So this is what we can do in a very real way. We can learn how to stay very calm even when unexpected or traumatic things happen to us. So you might like to just check in for yourself. Where do I sit on that spectrum of being able to do that, and would I like to be able to do that better? So in the One Gong system, which if you're familiar with, you will already have seen this picture, and if you're not, then it will be new, and I'm not going to go through all of it here. But when we're talking about working on our patterns, we're focusing on the 8th method, and we're also focusing on the 7th method, which is Tong 1, which is working on the heart consciousness patterns. And today I'm going to be adding in an element of, well, how do we work on emotional patterns? And remember that the overall goal of the Ren Shui system is working through the different One Gong methods and using them to grow our self-realization and wisdom and stabilize ourselves from the inside out, so that we grow more self-realization and wisdom and transform ourselves. So to summarize this section, the goal in Ren Shui is self-realization and wisdom. And the purpose of this goal is personal self-realization, which brings with it greater wisdom in order to be able to better contribute to the upliftment of the collective, in other words, humanity and everything beyond. And the first major milestone on this ladder of self-realization is commonly called or known as enlightenment. And enlightenment requires major purification of the physical, energetic, mental, and emotional parts of ourselves. And this is what will automatically happen as we take ourselves through the One Gong methods and practice them repeatedly. We're purifying ourselves. So we purify these parts of ourselves in a holistic way on all levels of our being. And in particular, one of the things that we do is we work on clearing our patterns. And in the level 7 and 8 methods, which I referred to previously, we work on the patterns of the heart, our heart consciousness, which is called Xingling, and we work on the patterns of consciousness. And we need to do this, we have to do this in order to clear the way for self-realization and wisdom. And this program that I'm offering here is more about clearing our emotional patterning, which is different from, but very interconnected with, the patterns of consciousness and the patterns of the heart. So really we could say there are 3 levels of patterning. We have the patterns of our heart consciousness, the patterns of our consciousness, and our emotional patterning. And they're all very, very interrelated, but we can separate them out, which helps us to work on them. So in the next video, we're going to look at the patterns of consciousness and emotions and see the connection and the interrelationship between them.